Everyone, welcome to another Word of the Week. We are officially on week 7 of Spread Love, Not Fear. If you're new here, welcome. Today we're going to be talking specifically about how to converse and transition towards the gospel. So, as far as you know, if you guys have missed it so far, we learned a lot of different methods of approaching sharing the gospel. Whether that's setting the stage with Jason or having a prayerfully listening with Kevin Jung. And then last week we just had our brother home talk about how to break the ice. So to wrap it up together, how does that lead into this? Well, let's role play a little bit, all right? You're starting, you prayed about it, you're like, hey, I'm excited to go and evangelize out there. And then what happens now is you set the scene, everything's good, you see a person, you're like, hey, I want to share the gospel to them. And then since you listened to last week's video, you're like, all right, I got a great icebreaker. You say the icebreaker, and then it's like, crickets. And so, how do you go from a great icebreaker into something more in the conversation? I won't spend too long on this. My points are pretty straightforward. But I do want to bring in, of course, a little bit of scripture and really see how did Jesus do this. So first example I have is John 4. When Jesus came before the Samaritan woman and he said, can I have a drink of water? And of course, from that conversation, he begins to talk more about how she has multiple husbands, and really the conversation transitions over to talking about the water, how those who drink from the well will be thirsty again, but the water that he gives, they will not be thirsty again, which sparks interest. Like, hey, what is this water? Same thing with when Jesus did feeding the 5,000 in John 6. So Jesus fed the 5,000 and he goes, hey, I have the bread of life. If you eat from this bread that I give from my Father, you will not hunger again. And so, why did I bring all this up? Is that in the same way as we engage with people, first point is when you build a conversation with someone, it's all about context. Right? Just like how Jesus did it, there was a well, brings up the conversation of water, and then same thing when he fed the 5,000 with the bread, uses the bread as a context to really further into the conversation of the gospel. Now, what does that look like for you? As you're going out there, let's use a coffee shop, for example. That's something that you continue to build up on. So say you're at a coffee shop, icebreaker with that person. Now you're like, all right, what do I talk about next? Well, look around you. You're at a coffee shop. What's on their table? Are they reading a book? Are they doing some work? Maybe just ask them like, hey, why are you here? What brings you here? Is this a place where you like to get some studying done or work done? So use the context of your surrounding, or even maybe just how they responded, what they're wearing. Anything really can be something that could be helpful for you. Now, what about those who are, say, doing relationship evangelism? Then what? Well, this is even better because you already know this person that you're having, say, dinner or you're going out with. You know a little bit about their backstory, and you can respond to them. Hey, I remember last time you were telling me about challenges at work or maybe a relationship. How's that going? From there, you're able just to continue to build that conversation and going further and further. Now, the key part to this is not just not just developing a conversation, but also actively listening and responding based on what they say, right? So use context, then listen and respond with good questions based off of what they share. And so, as this person says, at the coffee shop, they share with you that they like to be here for work. Again, build off that conversation more and more. Now, it gets to this point of like, all right, we're having a great conversation. This person's opening up a lot. I'm opening up a lot to them. How do you go from good conversations to gospel-centered conversation? And a good 3 pointers that I would say is similar to how I talked about earlier, is build off that conversation. Second is really gauge the mood. And lastly is to find a good timing, right? So a good visual, if you would like, I like visuals, is car merging. When you merge on the freeway, um, you have to gauge different speeds. You have to gauge if this person's letting you in or not. Same thing, right? Um, when you are having that conversation, you want to transition towards the gospel. Gauge the conversation. Where is it going? Am I transitioning that conversation so that it's more personal things that where you can start introducing Christ a little bit more. Um, Even think about it from the mood. Maybe they're really rushed or busy, or they're like, hey, a little bit frustrated. Maybe not the best timing to introduce the gospel yet. Um, and lastly, again, just timing, making sure that if you do bring it up, you don't want to rush it, you don't want to force it. Be as organic as you can with that conversation. And so, how does that look like? And kind of one whole example is, yeah, if you're at the coffee shop, you're having a conversation with them, and you want to just really build off of what they shared. Like, hey, glad that you're always working here. What is it that you do from work? How's that been? Oh, it's challenging. It's hard. What makes it difficult? Okay. People. Yeah, people can be difficult. And then start introducing like, hey, I don't like my boss, or like, sharing like, yeah, there's challenges with my boss or like my coworkers or something like that. But here's what gets me through. And you can share with them a Bible verse and be like, hey, I always feel encouragement when I read my Bible. This is the key verse, or even just having church community and just start having those spiritual conversation. Um, I can't give you a very cookie cutter of um, best answers and questions to give, because part of that goes with what I shared is you're adapting using your context. Every single context is different, and being able to adjust accordingly, right? Okay. Outside of that, just key wrap ups again for you is that when you're going out there, after you do the icebreaker, just remember use your context, and then really think about what is it that you're conversing about. Really listen to them, and then respond with questions to carry that conversation. And then when it comes to transitioning, just really gauge the mood. Feel like if that's good timing, and really just build off of that ongoing conversation you had, and really slowly introduce, a little bit about yourself, or even something related to Christ or church, and really go from there. All right. I believe you guys are going to do great. I know that, it's all about small steps each time. So, keep at it. And we're right there with you. All right. So, outside of that, have a good one. See ya.